Hi friends! This week we're going to try yet another craft that I've never tried before. One that I've been hesitant to try, but you keep asking for. Needle felting. I got these two kits given to me as Christmas presents, and it seems the best way to get me to try something is to give me a kit. So let's try these out. I think that I'm going to start with this kit since it just has one project versus this one that looks like it has multiple. This is the Hillfolk Woolly Llama Needle Felting Kit. I think that when I googled it, it came from Walmart. So let's go ahead and open it. Very pathetically, since I just painted my nails. Alright, we've got a foam block and some black thread, some thick instructions, and this looks like all of the wool. I've never really wanted to try needle felting because I just kind of imagine that the wool is feeling all creepy. You know, like catching on every little piece of dry skin or whatever. This must be the needle. What is that? Is that like a special coating? Is it supposed to look like that? Oh wow, you can see my fingerprints. Don't steal those. Okay, well, I guess we'll figure that out later if it's supposed to look like that. There's also a regular sewing needle and all of the felt. Okay, I read through the instructions and it doesn't say anything about why the needle looks like that, but it does say that we're going to need cardboard underneath the foam block. I'm just going to use the box that it came in. Then it says to divide the yarn into pieces for all of the body parts. It doesn't say how to divide it. Like, do I pull it apart? Do I cut it? I took a yarn spinning class and they told us to never cut the wool, just pull it apart. But I'm not making yarn, so I'm going to cut it. Okay, we need to use 1/3 for the body and then a tuft from another third for the head. But it doesn't say what a tuft is. I guess I'll just take like 1/3 of it. I hate unclear instructions. Then I'm going to divide the last third into quarters for the legs. Now I need to spread the body wool into a rectangle about 2 inches by 8 inches. Ugh, I need a ruler. Okay, starting at the short end, roll the wool into a cylinder. And needle until done for the body. Okay, here we go, I guess. I'll start over here and maybe try to keep it secure. I am really worried about stabbing myself with this thing because I'm still not sure if it's supposed to have whatever it has on it. I'm just going to keep rotating it and needling it. And there's this diagram in the instructions, and this is what I'm aiming for. Not even close so far. I will say the wool doesn't feel as disgusting as I thought it would, so that's good. I flipped it up on its end to try and round it out, and even though it looks really dangerous, I was trying to go really slowly. I just kept rolling the body around, trying to get the basic shape that was in the book. I figure areas that need to be smaller need to be stabbed more. I'm not quite sure. The instructions didn't really specify. Even as careful as I was trying to be, I did stab myself and drew blood. This would not be the last time this happened. Alright, after cleaning my hand up, I'm back at it. A little more cautious, but no more knowledgeable. Okay, that's good enough. Next, we gotta make the neck. So I'm gonna roll the neck into a cylinder and needle until done, leaving one end ragged so I can attach it to the body. Okay, the neck ended up really long, so I'm just trying to stab at it at an angle to see if that's gonna push the fibers sort of sideways and make the neck shorter. Well, that looks incredibly inappropriate, but let's attach it to the body. I really like how the instructions just say needle the neck to the body, and that's it. It's just that easy. How do I do that and not stab myself a million times? Okay, well, that looks strange. Next, we're going to make the head. So I need to spread this out, fold it in half, and then somehow roll it into a cone. But everything ends up thicker than it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be a cone? How? Then I'll just stab it into shape, I guess. I feel like there should be more instructions to this. Like, this doesn't look like a cone. This is like the biggest head. His neck is flimsy. The head is gonna fall right off. I'm gonna try to like shove some of this in here. Ugh. I don't like this. Maybe if I spread out as much of this wool as possible, I can mush the head on here. And then maybe it'll get smaller. Well, now he looks like a Dr. Seuss character. I'm gonna finish attaching his head. That looks like a camel, but it's not a camel. Maybe if I shorten his face a little more? Okay, that looks better, I think. Maybe if I make the tip a little smaller? Does that look more llama-y? Maybe his neck needs to be shorter. I don't know, he just looks like a sea monster. His neck is way too long. Pause while I go wash that. I'm really trying to hold this with my fingers out of the way while I'm doing this because I'm really tired of getting stabbed. So I went back and forth trying to reshape him, making his head shorter and smaller, and then making his neck shorter, and eventually I got to this. I gotta move on. Next, let's make the legs. We need a 5 by 2 inch rectangle, then fold it in half, and then roll it into a cylinder and needle that. Then I need a wisp of dark brown wool. How big is a wisp? I guess I'm just gonna use this much and wrap it like this. Then I'll just start needling it on and wrapping as I go. Go slow, go so slow, don't stab yourself. Okay, that's a leg right there. Now I need to make 3 more. Then we get to attach these to the body. It, of course, doesn't really say how, so I guess I'm just going to try to wrap up the side, and then also try to needle the armpit a little bit so it stays and doesn't, like, sploot out as soon as he stands up. He looks like an insane horse. This leg is really flimsy. Can he stand up? Kind of. Next, we need to make a tail. So we need a 2-inch strip of dark wool, make a loop, and needle it to his butt. Sorry. Is this what their tails look like? Now let's make some ears. We'll take some dark wool, fold it in half, and then somehow into a triangle. I don't understand how that works. So I'm just going to try to make it thin at the top and the bottom. You can't see what I'm doing at all, but I'm trying to make it look like a pointy-ish oval shape. Then I'll do the other one. Ow! That one really hurt. I really got myself that time. I'm really going to have to look up and see what that stuff on the needle is, and make sure I don't have to go get a tetanus shot. I'm also really messing up my nails every time I need to go disinfect my hands. The ears ended up being really huge on his head, so I continued to kind of fold them in and stab them to make them smaller. Not sure why I filmed all of it, because I don't think you can see anything that I'm doing. But finally, I need to attach them to his head. The instructions said to pinch it at the base while needling it to make a pleat, but that seems like a surefire way to put your fingers right in the stab zone. Alright, well, I looked up some reviews of this kit, and apparently a common complaint is that the needles come rusty. So that's not a super helpful coating that I don't know about, it's just tetanus waiting to happen. I did clean my hands like immediately, and thanks to a dog bite a few years ago, I am up to date on my tetanus booster. But yeah, don't be like me. Anyway, we're almost done, so let's finish this guy up. I need to thread this needle with all 6 strands of the thread, And let me just think that I'm being extra efficient and try to use a needle threader, but not be able to pull the thread through the hole because it's doubled up, and then just have to wet the thread with my mouth and thread it with my fingers. Whatever. Let's knot the end of the thread, and we're going to go through the back of the ear and out the front of the head where I want the eye. Then do a French knot, which is like the only embroidery knot that I know. Go through his head and make a second eye. Then I'm going to go back in and come out on the side of the nose area. Now here it says to do a fly stitch, which in theory I understand, but the directions that they show don't match how it's supposed to end up looking. See, his nose area kind of makes a rounded X with a loop pointing up and a loop pointing down, but their instructions show 2 loops hanging down. His face would look nuts if I did that. Anyway, after his face is done, I'm going to thread back through his head and come out behind the other ear. And his whole ear came off. Great. Let me fix that real quick. Then I'll tie another knot, and then it says to needle the ends of the thread into the wool. Last, I just need to add white wool to his body. I gave up on the instructions by this point, and I'm just kind of loosely attaching white wool around his body so that it covers him, but it's also still puffy enough to hide his insecurities. I added a little tuft on his head, like they said. He still looks cuckoo bananas, as one of my students would say. So this guy is done. I did a pretty not great job. I mean, he stands up at least, but he's got a weird, long face. He kind of looks like a greyhound. Like that looks okay like that. I probably should have wrapped this white wool around him better because he's got a naked butt. Don't look. But I think that I learned some things. I stabbed myself a million times, so we're going to ignore that. But I would say this kit, no, just don't get it. The instructions weren't great, and the needle tried to kill me. Let's try the other one. Alright, so the next kit we're going to do is this needle felting kit. It says it's 8+, so I qualify. Engaging and easy to learn and great for all experience levels. We'll see about that. Includes links to online videos. Well, that might be helpful. A plant you can't kill. That would be great. Let's just get it open. We have little pots in 2 different sizes. We have blue wool, purple wool, green wool, uglier green wool, darker green wool, 2 different browns, orange, red, black, and a giant bag of white wool. A big old block. Some needles? I don't know what the difference is between them. Why do I have so many? Well, none of them seem to be rusty as far as I can tell, but I don't know why I have 4. A QR code for the videos, and a long instruction book. Okay, I'm gonna read these and watch their videos, and I'll be right back. Well, I read the instructions, but when it came to watching their video, the QR code didn't work. I tried typing in the link that was on the card and in their instruction booklet, and that went nowhere also. Sweet. I tried going to their website, which has a section that says that it has free felting tutorial videos, but clicking on that takes you nowhere. Literally, it's just a video. It doesn't go anywhere. I clicked around on the website for a while and didn't find any videos, so I finally just went to their YouTube. They do have a bunch of videos, only one that's specifically for the second project in this kit. I'm obviously not blocking anything out since they're on a public YouTube channel, and I watched a few of their beginner videos, and I would say they're mildly helpful. If nothing else, it's better to see someone doing it versus just looking at pictures. This video was definitely the most helpful. Also, looking around on their website, I figured out that the needles are actually replacements for this tool, which is not in the kit. Anyway, let's just get on with the project. Now, I have my little block, and I have one of the needles, and first we're going to make this cactus monster. We're going to start by rolling some white wool and needling it into a sort of egg shape. 2 minutes in, and I stabbed myself. It didn't draw blood, but it did hurt. I need a better solution. The book does actually suggest thimbles, but I'd be lucky if I could find one thimble, let alone 3 or 4. So I opted for tweezers. Laugh if you want, but this works. I didn't stab myself once after this. After getting this nice and egg-like, I took this green wool and put a layer over the white wool. The one thing that does bother me is that the sizes of the wool in the pictures do not match what they give you in the kit. Like, look how thick that layer is. I mean, minor gripe. Since mine is obviously a little bit thinner of a layer, I attached it a little bit at a time so that I could move it around and cover where there was white showing through. He does look kind of wrapped, I guess you would say, like not as all one piece as I think they're supposed to look. I feel like I can see the threads all laying in the same direction. Does that make sense? I'll just keep stabbing him and maybe that will go away. I assume that the more you poke it, the tighter it gets. Like it pulls all the little threads in closer and denser. Also, when I was looking up reviews for the other kit, I saw people complaining about needle marks on their projects. Is that a valid complaint? Like, I can see where the needle has gone in and out, and I don't really care, I guess, but I don't know, is that a bad thing? I kind of assume that if I just handle it enough, they'll kind of disappear. Okay, there. I successfully made a green ball. Now we need to make some spots with this dark green. I'm going to take this little teeny bit and roll it into a tiny ball. Then needle it to the creature. I should decide where his face is going to be before I keep going. I think this side looks flat, so his face is going to be right here. Alright, let's make him some more spots. He looks like a pickle. Now I need to make some eyes with the white wool. Then I need to make 2 small black dots as the pupils. I don't know if you can see it, but there's hairs sticking up around the eye and it's bothering me. So I'm going to trim that. Okay, then it says to use black wool around the eyes to create more definition. I guess I'm just going to try to secure it without it also disappearing. Alright, now that was the last step, but I am going to trim it a little bit because I feel like he's just got black felt hanging off of him everywhere. Alright, there he is. I'm just going to stick him in this little pot. Oh, he needs something underneath him to hold him up. How about some rocks? There he is. I made a weird pickle monster. Cute. Next, let's make the second project in the instruction booklet. A mushroom. Starting with red wool to make a disc shape, sort of. Just stabby, stabbing. I'm starting to feel the tiniest bit more confident and like I have some sort of idea what I'm doing. Like maybe if I needle the inside more, it'll be thinner and have a sort of lip around the edge. Also, not constantly worrying about injuring myself has made it so much faster. Next, we're going to take a little bit of white wool and make the underside of this. Maybe if I just get the center secured, I can sort of play with the shape a little bit. Alright, well that's weird looking, but that's our mushroom top. Now we need to make some little dots. Basically, just like we did with the pickle monster. That looks like a crazy looking dice. Or a die. I guess one is a die. Okay, I'm going to trim the white a little bit just because I feel like it's kind of extra fuzzy looking. And I'm going to trim around the outside. Why not make a bigger mess on my table with fuzz? Now I need to make the stem. So I need white wool and spread it out like this. And then I'm going to try to roll this really tight. I'm also kind of tucking the ends in because I don't want it to be super tall. Hopefully this squishes down because it's really, really thick. Let's go. Okay, so I kind of tapered it a little bit at one end, but I left the other end bigger, and the whole thing is pretty firm. So now I'm going to needle it to the top. And I kind of hate to say it, but this is kind of fun. It's almost like sculpting, but with felt. Alright, so that's done. It looks not great, but that's fine. Then we need some light brown wool. And I'm just going to wrap a little around the bottom here and attach it. This is the vulva of the mushroom, I guess. I've never heard of that, but the guy in the video kept saying it, and I thought he was just being weird, so I looked it up. I guess this mushroom is a lady. Anyway, the last step is to take some dark brown wool for the dirt. The instructions say to just poke it into the pot, but like, what am I trying to accomplish with this? Even in the smaller pot, the wool is pretty loose, and stabbing it is just going to make it smaller. They don't really explain, they just say, poke it in there. Also, the noise. Ugh, needle on clay? Ugh. Instead, I'm just going to make a kind of lump of wool and then attach the mushroom to that. It's still super low and loose in the pot, so rocks to the rescue again. There we go. That's better. Cute. Since there was so much wool left over and I was feeling a little bit more confident, I decided to try and make something on my own. Of course, my skills are pretty beginner, and I figured I could really only make simple shapes. And since there's sort of vaguely every color of the rainbow, if you ignore that I turned that ugly green into yellow, I decided to go with something I've made a few times already, a rainbow rose. I made little discs, slowly increasing in size, and then just needled them together in a sort of spiral as I went. It's definitely not perfect, but I'm still happy with it. One thing that I didn't know that would happen is that the foam block, after being stabbed with the barbed needle so many times, kind of starts to break down. I kept noticing these little black spots on my felt, and then when I squished the foam mat with my hand, the center where I'd been working was way softer than the edges. So I just tried to work toward the edges of the block, or even in the air, so that it wouldn't pull as many little pieces of the foam up into the felt. Once the flower was done, I made a dense brown stick that I attached to the bottom of the rose as a stem. Then I covered that with a layer of dark green felt, kind of twisting the ends out and needling them down as leaves, and wrapping the stem covering the brown. And that's the finished rose. I still have a lot of wool left over, so I can add that to my hoard for another project someday. So what did we think? We already went over this llama kit, just no. And the cactus felting kit wasn't too bad. They give you a lot of supplies that seem to be good quality. Granted, I know nothing about felting supplies. It does kind of stink that the video links didn't work, but they do have a lot of videos on their YouTube channel. And the instructions seemed more helpful than the other ones. Although maybe it's just that I had already figured out some stuff. But more importantly, what do I think of felting as a whole? I don't dislike it as much as I thought that I would. I might even say that I like it. I was really enjoying it around the time I was making the mushroom, but by the time that I finished that rose, I was ready to be done. Maybe it was just because it took so long. It's also not as gross feeling as I expected, and making little fuzzy creatures has lots of potential for creativity. Once I figured out how to stop stabbing myself, it got exponentially more fun. I probably will try this again at some point. So what did you think? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.